unknown is inevitable. The only thing you can do about it is change your attitude to it. And hero myths tend to point out that if you approach it voluntarily, it's the source of new information. If you run from it, it kills you. Tend to point out that if you approach it voluntarily, it's the source of new information. If you run from it, it kills you. Contact with the unknown is inevitable. The only thing you can do about it is change your attitude to it. And hero myths tend to point out that if you approach it voluntarily, it's the source of new information. If you run from it, it kills you. Well, those are your options. Like, your option isn't to not have it. If things didn't change, there wouldn't be any life. But you do have the option of how to face it. And it does work. I mean, if you're engaged in an argument with somebody, an abstract hypothesis about the relative value of things, including the self and others. Collective unconscious is the first line of defense that people erect against the unknown, which is basically to say that if something unexpected happens, you start imagining what it might be. So all I'm saying basically is that if something unexpected happens to you, it always occurs in some form of representation. And it's that form of representation that Jung identified. Two lanes of masculine symbolism in mythology. One's the hero and one's the father. Okay? The father gives rise to the hero, which is to say that you're a product of your culture. But the hero also gives rise to the father. And you can also blow your whole system. It's like that's. I think that's what we did when the science. I guess I should. No, it's not quite 3. When the scientific revolution came about, the discoveries of the scientific revolution in abstract form seemed to contradict the presumptions of the religious systems upon which we erected our adaptational structures. So the consequence of abstraction was that we could destroy our belief systems, and that brought on an existential crisis. So the problem with abstraction is, yes, you can explore the abstract, it's very powerful, but you can also be undermined really easily by words. So another reason that it's really useful to study mythology, I think, is because it gives your ideology, your necessary belief, the kind of firm ground that can no longer be undermined easily by a few casual words. Because you're no longer, if you think about it as a tree, you're way up here in the branches, you haven't got the foggiest clue what's down here. It's all unconscious, so to speak, which is to say it's all procedural or it's still embedded in images. Somebody can come along and give you a bit of harassment here and it blows your whole adaptational structure apart. You hate that. I mean, it's very hard on you, but that's mostly because you don't know what's down here. So your house is built on shifting sand and not on a rock, and the point is you're supposed to, this ties in with the Philosopher's Stone imagery that we'll get to in the second half of the course, but the idea is that you're supposed to build your house on a rock, and the point is you have to figure out what that rock is. And that's part of the reason why we're spending so much time discussing this pattern of adaptation. Because if you know that in your belief system is a description of the process by which belief systems are generated, and that's the thing that you need to know above all else, well, it makes you much more resistant to casual disruption of your adaptational structure. Because you know what you should do when you don't know what to do, which is the thing you need to know the most. So, which is right in a sense. There's a domain that's the unknown. It has a positive side and negative side. Here's the reason for that is because unless you understand those mythological representations, you have no idea how terrifying the thing is that you want to avoid. Because in normal circumstances, in our well-protected existences, we never ever encounter anything that scares us badly enough to let us know how scared we could be. If you look at these mythological representations, you can get an abstract notion of how terrifying unexplored territory really is. And it's very useful. It gives instant insight into and that's what a coherent story does. Since stories are about patterns of action that are adaptive, that makes a certain amount of sense, because when we're acting on the environment, what we're trying to do is to transform it into a place where our emotions are optimally balanced, where we're not subjected to pain or anxiety, where we have hope for the future, and where we view life as satisfying. Can you see this? That soul's in the jaws of hell. And Pinocchio is a hero myth. I mean, it has all the elements of a hero myth. Pinocchio is not real at the beginning of the story. It's made out of wood. And the blue fairy comes down and says, if you're good, you can become a real boy.